we can start today's webinar. To start with some housekeeping notes, please note that this session is currently being recorded and will be made available through EMA corporate website and in a YouTube channel. Throughout the sessions, participants are able to ask questions, but for this we ask you to use the Slido tool to submit any questions you may have throughout the session. This interaction, of course, is voluntary, and you may opt to remain anonymous. If you choose to use this tool, of course, you're consenting to the process of your personal data, as explained in the EMA data privacy statement for to the use of Slido. How can you join Slido? To submit your questions, you have two options. You can use your phone, where you can use the QR code that is currently displayed on the screen, or you can join using their website and add our OMS code as a participant. Of course, once you submit your question, you can use the upvote option available in Slido in case you'd like to see this question and answer. So please, before submitting your question, review the questions that have been already submitted to ensure that there is no duplicated. And if your question is already there, please use the upvote to ensure that it goes to the top of the line. So when we reach to the end of the session, where we're gonna have our Q&A dedicated part, so the questions that you submit in this Slido will be shown to everyone. At the back hand, just to tell you that we have some of our EMA colleagues, and of course they will try to address some of your questions the best possible way. However, please note that me as OMS business lead, I will guide you through this presentation, so there may be some questions that only myself will be able to answer them. So please wait until the end of today's session so that I can show your question in the screen and I can properly address it. As I mentioned, we have some colleagues at the back hand, but please note that we don't have all EMA colleagues available, so it's possible that some of the questions that you may submit, we may not have the specific colleagues in the back hand, and those questions may not be answered today, but we will forward the question to the relevant colleagues and will ensure that an answer will be provided. How can you get around with these answers? So you can either see the answers that some of the available colleagues will answer directly in the platform. Some of those answers will also be published in our FAQ document published in our OMS portal. And last but not least, there is always our customer support platform, the service now. You can always use this to submit any specific question, any case that need a more tailored support. So this presentation is currently available in the EMA event webpage, and once we finish the session, I will make sure that the latest version will also be available in our OMS portal under the documents section. The recording will be available later on, both in EMA YouTube channel and the EMA event webpage that you just used to access today this WebEx link. So diving into our OMS session, So my name is Deborah Braga. I'm currently the OMS business lead, and I will guide you the best possible way through some of the key elements, key principles of OMS. So today's webinar, as you may know, it's part of our SPOR week webinar. So we've gone through some of the elements. We are in the middle of the week, and we still have other webinars to conclude on Monday with our OMS, with our SPOR API webinar. But for today's session, what is the goal of this session? So we aim to increase awareness of OMS activities, share the current and future planned activities, and also to show you how OMS is currently addressing the customer feedback that you sent to us. And how we're going to do this? So we have a very busy agenda, so I'll try to be concise. So we'll start with some introductions to OMS. Some key principles. We'll dive into some of the OMS processes, because sometimes it looks like we're just handling change requests, but there's a whole system at the back end to ensure OMS is up to date. One of the processes, of course, is the change request process. Then we'll show you some statistics on how OMS has been performing. I'll show you where to find key documentation and where to go to find training material. I'll give you this later on in the presentation. Then we're going to have a short break just for a quick water. Then we'll guide you through OMS in project systems, how OMS is integrated, and how important and how all ties together. And last but not least, the status update on what is planned, what we did in the last quarter, and some key takeaways and conclusions. Last but not least, the Q&A sessions. This is a very popular one, so please bear with us. We'll get there. So starting with some introductions, key principles of OMS. So OMS is a dictionary that provides the central source of organization data. This is hosted by EMA and is accessible and used throughout EMA, and not only internally, but also by external stakeholders. An organization in OMS is captured as legal entity, and it groups all its physical locations within a country. So roles such as if it's a marketing authorization holder or a manufacturer, context if it's used as human context or veterinary context, and details such as department. None of these three elements are managed or maintained in OMS. This is very important to retain, that OMS manages legal entities. And one very practical, one very good example is the case of EMA. So EMA used to be placed in London, in the United Kingdom. We moved a couple of years back to the Netherlands, and what is the impact, how this actually apply to OMS. So basically, if the country changes, the legal entity basically changes, and we had to create a new organization ID to capture our EMA in our OMS dictionary. And one of the other frequent questions that we are asked is about departments and business units, how OMS links, and why we call it OMS dictionary, because OMS capture the legal entity, but at the same time we also capture alternative names that can be used, business names that can be used, and all these can be captured under the main organization name as an alternative name attribute. So an organization data is structured with unique identifiers. one for organization and another one for location. And all those identifiers can be mapped to source systems that we use to create our OMS dictionary on the day 0. One of the sources that we used was actually EUDR GMDP, and actually linked with the previous point that we highlighted when we talked about EUDR GMDP and how the data was there. So you see indeed some slight differences. So the data in EUDR GMDP, the organization name used to contain not only the legal entity name, in this case Sandoz, and the legal entity type, but as part of the name you would include also manufacturing lines, dedicated manufacturing sites. But as we mentioned, OMS does not capture these details as part of the name, and that's why all these records, they would be merged into one single record as having the legal entity as Sandoz and the legal entity type. The same happened for locations. We grouped all the same physical locations under the same loc ID, because it's the same physical place, it should be captured under one unique loc ID. It's possible that in one single place you can have several legal entity types operating, doing business in this physical place. And how is this maintained in OMS? When we look at the system and we see those potential duplicates, we may think that indeed this is a duplicate, but we need to remember that it's not only the physical location that it matters. We need to remember that it's the physical location, the organization name, and the relationship between both. So yes, we can have more than one legal entity type doing business in the same physical location, but all of them will have each own loc ID. And this is the way it will be reflected in OMS. One org ID per legal entity type and one respective loc ID to represent this physical location and its relationship with one certain legal entity. In terms of versions, so OMS publish always the latest version of the data available, and these versions come in a format of timestamp. We don't have the normal version 1, 2, and 3. No, we have the format in the date format. So the latest version will always be the one with the latest date. And last but not least, at the moment, OMS does not manage individuals, and this it has always been the case. So if an individual is required in a certain regulatory procedure, this needs to be dealt directly by each system. And here at this point, you probably have already some questions, but I will show you more towards the end of the presentation what are we currently doing about these individuals. In any case, ultimately, if an individual is requested, if an individual is registered within the official national business registry, then this is considered as a company, and hence, of course, it will assume the normal process, EMA registration process, and it will be created in OMS as an organization. But we'll come back to this because I know there's normally a lot of questions around this topic. So continue with our OMS key principles, and some of you may be aware that our dictionary is a public dictionary, is accessible to everyone, and anyone that have a SPOR role can submit or propose a change to our dictionary. Now, you're probably wondering, how do we prevent any malicious requests to be submitted? How do I ensure that my organization will not change the name to a wrong value? So this is done through our validation process. So it's true that anyone can submit a change request, but OMS in the back end, and we're going to see this in more detail in a couple of slides. So nothing that is submitted is immediately published. No. We have a validation process in the back end to ensure that anything that is currently being requested is valid and accurate to today's, to the latest version of the data. Moving on into data and references sources. So for those that are new to our OMS, so OMS is a standardized list of organization and location data. It's true that OMS uses reference sources of information, such as National Business Registry, headed letters, GMP certificates, to ensure that we have accurate data, the latest version of the information available. It's also true that OMS data aims to reflect the reality. So we aim to capture the correct organization, the correct legal entity type, the correct relationship that I was mentioning before, and the correct physical address. OMS aims to reflect equivalent information of the supporting documentation, but never a copy of those documents. As I started mentioning, that OMS will reflect a standardized data of this information. For more clarification on what these standards are, you can always consult our OMS data quality standards for the standards that we're currently using in our dictionary. So we were talking about validation, and standards, how exactly does this all tie together? So in a nutshell, this is very good visual of what exactly the summary the process consists. So the request is submitted. We have data about values, organization values, and location data. First step is always validation of the information, ensure that the information is accurate and it's valid. And second one will be, before we publish the data, will be to standardize the data according to when we talk organization name, the data will be standardized according to our OMS data quality standards. When it comes to locations, and for those new to OMS, we count with a tool in our system, which is the commercial name is Address Doctor. But what is this? This is no more than a tool that has a library that has information from more than 240 National Postal Service. And what does this basically do is to ensure that OMS will publish the locations with the local standards for each country. So we'll ensure that whatever we have in OMS is a mailable address, and it's a real address. For those locations, because we can have, such as PO boxes, sometimes they are not recognized by Address Doctor, and for the reason, we've also enriched our OMS dictionary with the standards used to ensure that our dictionary is indeed a standardized list of organization and location data. Now, moving on into OMS processes. So just an overview of the 4 pillars of processes performed by OMS. The 2 main processes where we are in direct contact with our SPOR users are change request and customer service through our ServiceNow platform. We also provide what we call data services. So this is reflected in this box. It's not such a little box. So this is done by our own initiative, such as mapping activities, integration with other systems, or even maintenance, basic maintenance of the information. last but not least, also another activity, which is what we call the deltas. This is one data service that we recently improved, and I have one extra slide next to give you more information of what exactly are those deltas, what is the added value, and how all ties together. So in addition to these two big boxes, data stewardship and customer service, we do data quality management. We do this through sampling of all perform activities. We monitor some dashboards through data profiling, where we see and we daily monitor any deviation to our data quality rules. And last but not least, the quality assurance, where we can identify root cause and potential process improvements to be implemented. And last but not least, we have our service management, where we coordinate with relevant bodies that may be required through our process and performance management. With all these with daily activities, it's very important for us to ensure that invoicing can be issued accurately, and that our KPIs report also reflect the same. And last but not least, that we hear from you, our users, through this customer satisfaction. This is very important for us to understand some elements from you, to hear from you where there is space for improvement in our end. And with this, let's then move on to this so-called delta tasks. So one task that is performed by us under the OMS data services. So this EV in specific, these delta tasks, it was a recent improvement that we did, and it's a connection between EV and OMS. So OMS is reading these functions only one way, EV to OMS, okay? And here important is the first place to start when we have these two systems hand in hand. It's always OMS, because EV access is also managed by OMS. So even before you can access EV, you need to always make sure that the organization is correctly in your location, correctly registered in OMS. And this is done via OMS change request using our OMS portal. Okay, once the data is created, this is a responsibility of the marketing authorization holder. Once the data is correctly available in OMS, then of course you can access finally EV. If your marketing authorization holder is still not available, we recommend you to always use the data as we publish in OMS. And even if your data, you already have an EV code, please make sure that you're using OMS data, meaning the data as we publish in OMS, and always do a reference to our loc IDs. Why is this important? Because this will help us in our, and here we're finally getting to these EV deltas. What are these EV deltas? We're reading information from EV. We are importing information from EV into OMS. What type of information, you ask, are we importing? So we import first of all marketing authorization holder and sponsor EV codes. We import this into OMS, and we need to read the details to ensure that we capture indeed this EV code under the correct OMS location ID. Now that I give you an overview of this recently improvement deployed in OMS, let's then move on into our OMS change request process, which is the way that users have to propose a change to OMS. So in a nutshell, the requester can submit a change request to create or update any of the records in the system. Important, never to forget the supporting documentation. And why am I saying this? Because unfortunately, 40% of our rejections are due to the missing supporting documentation. We understand this is more work for the user, more work for EMA, and we also want to ensure that you have a good experience. We want to ensure a good experience in through the OMS process. So always make sure that you submit the required supporting documentation. Once you've submitted and the request is finally available in the system, the data steward will analyze the request. At this stage, it's important to know that the organization name and location data will be validated against our sources, in this case, the National Business Registry. And when validated, we will then standardize the data according to our OMS data quality standards. So after this assessment, and hopefully a successful assessment, we will do this assessment between 5 to 10 working days. And your change request can actually be approved or rejected. Once it's approved, which is what we want to achieve, the data will be automatically available and ready to use in OMS. If it's rejected, we will provide an acknowledged message. You will receive this via email on how can you successfully submit your change request to have your change approved in the next instance. Of course, if there is any disagreement or if you wish to have more information because the comment that you've received was not sufficient, you can always raise a service desk ticket and we'll happy to provide more clarification. So we saw now the process in a nutshell. Now I'm going to show you some demo through slides, not a real demo, but through slides in hope that this will be more visual to our new OMS users. So what do we expect? So first and foremost, for you to be able to submit a request, you need to log in to our OMS portal. To submit a change request, the user, you first need to perform a quick search with minimum requirements. We always advise to add a small part of the name and the country. This is our recommendation. Then you click search and an outcome will be provided to you. If the organization is not available, you will be prompted with this button and you can use this button to create a new organization. If you see that the legal entity is already available, but the location that you're looking for is not yet available in the dictionary, you should use this plus sign to create a new location. Now, when you choose one of these options, we're going to start with the create organization. A form will appear, and for you to successfully submit, we advise you to fill in most of the fields. There are, of course, mandatory fields that you need to submit and provide most of the information. Never to forget the supporting documentation. This will be crucial to our validation and will ensure an expedited process for the creation of your organization. We always advise the best document for the creation of a new organization is always to attach a copy from the National Business Registry. In any case, if this is not available, we have a document that clarifies for each and every single case what is the best document for you to submit. I'll show you in a couple of slides where to find this guidance. And I think I've already mentioned this, but it's very important to highlight at this point one more time that to create a new organization, this can only and should only be submitted when a new company is registered as a legal entity with the local authorities. Because if your company already exists in the National Business Registry, and we're talking, for example, an update of organization name, this should not undergo as create new organization change request type. If it's not a new legal entity type and it's update of the name, then you should submit update organization name change request. When we saw the form, you can see that the form is very similar. The difference between the new and the update is that when you submit an update change request, most of the fields are going to already be populated. Some of them will even, you will not have access to change them. But to update an organization name, this should only be submitted to our OMS dictionary when the same is reflected in the National Business Registry. What does this mean? OMS will capture what is captured and how it is captured in the National Business Registry. If you have one registration in the National Business Registry and you are in the National Business Registry updating the name, this is what OMS will do. And in this instance, please do not create a new organization, simply submit update organization name. One of the frequent requests that we receive, which is to deactivate a location. So this is one of the easiest forms you have in our platform to submit. To deactivate a location, it's very important. There are two mandatory elements when you submit this form. One of them is the request reason, and we're referring to deactivate location. The second mandatory element, it can be provided in two different forms. One through justification. You should write a comment with the description, and only if this is true, of course, because in this scenario, deactivate a location should only be submitted when a company is no longer operating or doing business in that physical location. No other scenario, if you say, I want to deactivate because I don't need it anymore, this is not a valid reason. If the organization is still doing business in that physical location, this is not going to be the reason to deactivate the location. A location in OMS can only be deactivated when the company is no longer using it as a place of business. And I was telling you there are two possible ways to do this. You either submit an attachment with this same justification, or by simply write this comment under the justification. And we see a quick demo of the change request process, now showing you where to find the type of supporting documentation to be submitted per type of change request. This is all detailed in an extensive guidance that we have in our portal. Of course, the type of document depends not only on the jurisdiction, the country, and also the type of organization. All these we have a couple of tables in this document that you can narrow down which one is actually applicable to the case of the organization that you're trying to create. Now, we talk about the process. I showed you the portal. We talked about supporting documentation, but I have not shown you the validation. The validation is how we look into all these elements and how do we make it happen and eventually publish in our dictionary. So now bring you here a view of our backhand tool. So this is not an image that you see every day, just an example for you to see what we see in the backhand. So we first receive a task, change a task, which in this case is a change request, and we're going to see in two stages. I'm first going to do the validation and standardization process of organization, and then I'll show you the same for the location. So the first, looking into the organization, we receive a change request with the organization name and the legal entity type. Okay. First step is always validation, where we look at the document that you provided and we ensure we go directly to this National Postal Service to ensure that the information is accurate and this is indeed the latest version of the data. So after this validation is a success, we move into the second step, standardization. And standardization in this case, we always need, because the standards are written per country, there is standards per country, we try to unify them, but of course, countries have their own rules. We try to always unify them, but at the same time use each jurisdiction rule. In this case, for UK, what we use is that we don't write the acronym, we actually write the limited word. So what we will do here is we're not changing the meaning of the organization. What we'll do is we will standardize the data. So we have, as I said, two elements as part of the organization name. We have the first element, which is the organization name, and the second one, the legal entity type. And what we change here, as you can see, we just deleted the acronym and we replace it with limited word. So this is basically the organization standardization. For the location, for us, is way easier because of what? Because of what I mentioned before, because of that address doctors tool. But if this is address doctor is the standardization step. Before the standardization, we first need to do the validation. The same as the organization, we look at the document, we go into the National Business Registry, which is the case of this one. We ensure the relationship is accurate and it's a valid one. Once this validation is a go, we move into the standardization step, and this is the easiest step because with one click we access the national library, the information used by the National Postal Service, and automatically the location is standardized with the local standards. Is updated. Some small tweaks will happen. In this case, what actually happened here, as you can see, as part of the address, we have another organization name, but the National Postal Service does not consider this element crucial for the mailability of the address, and for that reason, this is deleted. So this is not an element that we capture in OMS because it's not crucial to find the physical place of this location. And I showed you a bit of the backhand. Now, if you remember from that nutshell, we're still missing the last step of the change request process, which is either approval or rejection. And I will show you first the rejection. As I mentioned, you will always receive an email acknowledgement with rejection reason code, a short keyword of why was it rejected, and this is the most important, which is an open field where we provide you more comments, more information on the justification, why was it rejected, and most of the times we also provide you some guidance on how to successfully create or update the information in our OMS dictionary. Very important. Supporting documentation. We have been talking about this, but crucial that always ensure before you click submit change request form, always make sure that all the elements are correctly populated. Because after you submit, the change request cannot be approved and you will have to wait for the change request to be closed to be able to submit again a new change request. You cannot submit one change request whilst the previous one is still under assessment. And of course, this will have a negative impact for you because there's more time that you have to wait for the data to be looked at. So always ensure that you have all the necessary elements and supporting documentation before you actually click the submit option. So this is the worst case scenario, rejected. Now, which is what we want to achieve, which is an approval change request. When the change request is approved, the information is automatically, I think there's a delay of 10 seconds until the information is automatically available in OMS portal and ready to be used. At this, I mentioned that with a rejection, the user receives an acknowledgement message. The same well, not the same, but the similar acknowledgement message will be sent with the approval comment saying, so your change has been approved. You can proceed with your day-to-day work. And with this, we end our change request process. Now, a quick overview into our OMS statistics. So just a small highlight to the first part of this year, because the statistics that we have available for the time being. So in comparison with last year, just to highlight a slight increase on the tickets, on the service desk tickets that we've received. Looking into SLAs, change request SLAs, we continue to perform at 100%. We've been doing this for the past 3 years now. And even with the slight increase that we experience in service desk, we were able to increase by 1 point the compliance of our SLAs within this service desk tickets. Now, moving on into documentation, because we've been talking about all this process, but you have all sorts of documentation and platforms with information available for you to consult at any point in time. So there are basically 5 points where you can find relevant information to the use of OMS. So the one, and I will show you how is this organized, but the one, of course, always the first to go is our OMS portal, where you have all sorts of guidance manual, where you see screenshots of all the steps that you need to perform, all clicks. So this quick demo that I showed you, this is also available in our OMS web user manual. You can find even guidance on how to register, information about the change request process, how to successfully create it, and last but not least, our OMS frequent asked questions, where we often receive the same question. So you always a good document to have in hand to consult any question that you may have. Most likely the question will be already, the answer to this question will be already available in our OMS FAQ document. Another point where you can get some support is the EMA account management portal. In this case, more relevant to the registration and to access and all the roles that you have available. You can also use the EMA corporate website to have a more general overview of the project. You also have at your availability some training material available in YouTube channel, in EMA YouTube channel. And last but not least, if any of these 4 places you're still unable to find the answer to your question, you can always reach out to us through a ServiceNow portal, and we'll ensure that you have a tailored answer to your question. Now, taking back to our portal, so this is what is to expect. I know it's a lot of documentation, but if you have any question, I can assure you that most of the answers will already be there. So we organize our OMS portal in a strategic way. We started with service, then we proceed with process guidance, information on certain OMS consuming systems, some information in terms of performance and results about our customer satisfaction. I've talked about this and I will talk a little bit more in the upcoming slides. Guidance in terms of registration. This is very important, especially for first-time users of OMS. And last but not least, information about API, a more technical side of and guidance on how to access this. If you're still overwhelmed with all this documentation that we have there and you say, okay, where am I supposed to start? So for new OMS users, this will be my guidance to you. So under the OMS portal, the document section, before you start your first contact with OMS, these are the 3 documents that I would advise you to go through, to consult, to have a quick look. Once you know a little bit more about OMS, and I hope this is the case already with this session, I would advise you to review some of the access documents that we have, including the web user manual that we talk. Following by our OMS data quality standards, as I mentioned before, we will not create a copy of supporting documentation. What we'll do, or we will not even create a copy in that EV Delta process that I showed you. We are not going to copy information as it is in EV. We will import the data in a standard way. We will create the data using our OMS data quality standards. And last but not least, how to change the data. We've been through the process already. Just give you some key documents relevant for this change request process to go successfully. And with this, let's take I think we can take a 6-minute break, if you agree. And let's do 10 minutes then, so that I can have a water, and we will be back at 11:05. Okay, so 10 minutes, and we will be back at 11:05. Thank you. And 11:05, so let's continue with our OMS webinar. We're almost there. So moving on into the next chapter, OMS in project and systems. How are we? Where are we? So two different overviews. So to tell you that OMS is already being used quite extensively throughout the life cycle of the medicine. So this is visual through this top part of the slide. The same, but in a different overview between systems, how and where OMS is being used in EMA systems. This is one slide that our OMS users have seen sometime in the past, but just to highlight the recent PLM release that they opened the PMS portal as read-only, and how OMS is, what is the role of OMS, especially for these systems. So it all starts with OMS. I've mentioned this at the beginning, but just to give you a more concrete example in this case in terms of PMS and PLM portal. So all starts with PMS. The first step for your goal, which will be to see products, to successfully see your products in PMS, the first step is always to ensure that organization and location details are available, not only available, but also active in OMS. Never to forget that those details will be created following our OMS data quality standard, and there will not be a copy of the supporting documentation nor the information that is uploaded in XCV-NPD. And what happens if this step doesn't go as it should be? Consequences of this is if an organization location details are not available in OMS or not active in OMS, two examples. One of them, you cannot access to EU systems such as PLM and PMS. It cannot be requested. When you use EAF web form, information cannot be submitted because organization and location it's not there. So this is the first step. OMS ensuring that the data is available there. Moving on into the second step. And to this step, we call it OMS, that OMS mappings are key for you to successfully move into this second step. And what you should be doing at this second step and to successfully move into the ladder. So ensure that XCV-NPD to OMS data mappings are correct in OMS. So how do you do this? You go into the location details, you open the location according to the data displayed, and if the mapping which is an EV code, if this EV code is available under the correct location with the next XCV-NPD code, this is how you check if the mapping is correct or not. Just some notes that any valid XCV-NPD code needs to be available under the correct log ID. Deletion of XCV-NPD codes in OMS can only happen if those EV codes, XCV-NPD codes, have been nullified in EV. You can have cases where OMS will have the latest version of the data. This is not the case for OMS to delete the mapping. No. Mappings will only be deleted from OMS only once those have been nullified in EV. in a nutshell, step 2, ensure that OMS mappings are correct in OMS dictionary. If those mappings do not exist, what is the consequence of not performing this second step correctly? You will not be able to see your products in PMS. Now, if you're having troubles with this second step, there are 2 troubleshoots that you can do to help you successfully move up the ladder. Any issues with the mappings, if you see that mapping is incorrectly allocated or a mapping is missing, any specific issue with the mapping, always report through Service Desk as an OMS question. This is the first point that we have here. If the mappings are correct, if you did this check and the mappings are correct, but still you don't see products in PMS, then you should open a report issue ticket in ServiceNow with the PMS as service offering, and then the colleagues will provide you guidance to overcome this issue. And moving on into the step 3, that the use of OMS gives you correct access to EU systems, and in particular, this step 3 is ensure that when you request a role in EMA account management, you always use the same loc ID that you correctly created in step 1, the loc ID that in step 2 had the correct mapping, and in step 3, you use again the same loc ID to request your access to the platform. And if this doesn't happen, for example, if a different loc ID is chosen for this role, the consequence is that you will not get into the last step and you will not see any products in the portal. So if all these steps go successfully, you use the same loc ID in step 1, same loc ID with the correct mapping in step 2, step 3, you request the role again with the same loc ID, then you have access successfully reached to the top, and you have access to the PLM, and you can see your product information. Moving on into status update. Status update. What have we been doing? What's planned for the coming months? So let's start with the general overview. Okay. So just to share with you that we've been doing some updates into our FAQ document, and also upload them directly into ServiceNow, because in the past, I think it was last year, we did we upload our frequent asked questions into ServiceNow. So if you use the search bar directly in ServiceNow and you type in keywords your question, your OMS related question, you can actually already have an answer, an immediate answer. This is due to this activity that we frequently perform, which is review our FAQ and upload, of course, those corrections into the ServiceNow. In terms of data management activities, so we did some review to our OMS category document in terms of description, and we did some refinements. We create new categories. I will show you in the next 2 slides what actually were those 2 categories that created. We implemented also the registration of entrepreneurs. I'll also show you more details. This will be captured under point 3 of next slide. We also are currently working with our legal colleagues to do some improvements in terms of our OMS data protection notice. And why is this? So that we can allow the registration of some natural persons. And to this, I will show you more details under point 5, which should be in 2 slides, okay? Under these data services, we've successfully deployed new scorecards, new dashboards to allow us to monitor our data to ensure that we continue to deploy the highest quality of the data. And this actually triggered to finding one specific issue with the way we were capturing the national business registry number for German legal entities. I'll give you more details. This will be captured. This will be the first point of the next slide. And we also support EDQM and HERA in one project that in relation to the post-marketing risk assessment tool. They have this tool and they want now to start capturing OMS local IDs. We support them with the mappings. I'll also give you more information in a nutshell. In terms of data quality, we continue always improving our data quality profiles, and we've seen a practical example of how important this activity is. We are doing currently a major review of our legal entity types. This was triggered a couple of months back with a I think Switzerland company that highlighted to us that we were actually not using the local standards. And we thought, okay, if we have this wrong, let's do a major review of all legal entity types that we're currently using. And in the meantime, if they've changed, because the countries also, we believe that they also review their own legislations frequent, and our rules, they were initially created in 2016. So some of them may be outdated. That's why we're doing this major exercise to review our standards and to ensure that what we have is accurate. We'll come back to this in the upcoming, I'm sure, in the upcoming webinars with more information of the outcome of this exercise. In terms of documentation, as I mentioned, we are doing a major review of the FAQ documents. We aim to create a new document on how to read, because I know the first impact to OMS documents, it's a lot of documentation, I know, and we want to make something, a quick guidance, more user-friendly. We're still working on the details of this. In terms of awareness and visibility, so we are here today with our SPOR week web thread of webinars, okay? And short after, I will invite you to pay attention to your mailbox. You should receive a notification, an invite for our SPOR customer satisfaction survey. I highly recommend you to spend some time with this to give us your input, what you like about not only OMS, what you like about SPOR, what you dislike about SPOR, how can we improve, where can we improve. So I highly recommend you to spend some minutes around this. And of course, we'll continue with our quarterly SPOR updates. In terms of modernization and what we're doing in terms of system improvements, I'll also show you some work that is currently being developed and show you what will be the added value of those improvements and the impact for you. So starting with work that has been started, work that is ongoing, or it may have been completed already. So we're going to start with the review of a German National Business Registry number. So as I mentioned, this comes to our attention through the recently deployed scorecards on mappings deduplication. And what we found false duplicates, what we thought it was duplicates, but after assessment, we found that they were false duplicates. And after some investigation, we noticed that they were indeed false duplicates because it seems that different district courts, different German registration offices can actually use the same National Business Registry number. And okay, so now we have a problem. How did we fix it? So the way we found to fix this is by what we started this activity. We will continue this activity in the next quarter. The way we find to fix this was by enriching our OMS dictionary with the place of register, with the district court information, with the register office information. And I'll leave you here one example of these false duplicates that we found. Indeed, it had the same National Business Registry number, but as you can see, it's two different companies. And now with the added district court or registration office, we can finally distinguish as two different legal entities, two different legal addresses. And again, we're back to our main goal when we created these mappings of and adding National Business Registry is to ensure that there is a clear identification of the legal address for each organization and legal entity type. So we started, of course, by correcting those false duplicates because we were getting a biased result, a wrong result in our scorecards. But because Germany has a lot of companies with us, registering with OMS, it's an ongoing cleansing. We're more than halfway there, okay? But we will continue enriching all German legal entities with this, taking into consideration this new way to capture the German National Business Registry number in OMS. Moving on into a second activity that's still ongoing. So EDQM and ERA came to us this year because they wanted to enrich their post-marketing risk assessment tool with OMS location identifiers, and this to help them expedite communication of any surveillance reports with the network, and especially with members that use OMS on a mandatory basis. The identification would turn way easier once we all use the same location identifier. And how OMS help with this activity? So OMS is currently supporting with the mapping of those entities currently being used by this tool. So we started with the manufacturers and we're now concluding the API mappings of non-principal active principal. So and what is the impact, as I mentioned? With this, we ensure that all data that is currently, all organization and location that's currently being used in this risk assessment tool are already registered in OMS. And we're going to keep an open communication with EDQM and ERA to ensure that all data that they need will be previously registered in OMS. And last but not least, entrepreneur registration. This is one of the points that we've already completed. This is actually linked with another activity that we perform in terms of categories. So why did this come to life? So whilst a long-term solution is under assessment, there was a niche of entrepreneurs that needed to be registered in OMS because they were blocked, they were unable to proceed with any veterinary regulatory procedures in UPD. They were unable to being issued other GMDP certificates, and even some entrepreneurs that were acting as marketing authorization holders in EV. So how OMS is going, what is the process, how is OMS going about to the registration of these entities? So OMS will register these entrepreneurs. And who are those entrepreneurs? This is entities that are not registered with the official National Business Registry, but they are publicly available in the official entrepreneur database of each country. So if you want to know more about the sources, or even if you want to tell us, to share with us a source that is out there and is not in our data quality standards, please let us know via service desk. But for the time being, the sources that we're using are available in our OMS data quality standards. How will they be registered in our dictionary? So they will basically, you will see that they will have two major group of categories. So first of all, they will have the usual industry and pharma company category. This is mandatory for us to ensure that downstream systems can use the data, can actually use the data and can see them. And last but not least, we'll add two new categories, which will identify those as the type of organization that they are, which is entrepreneurs. This will also be a major support for once a definite solution is in place, so that we can ensure a smooth transition into the new system or the new solution. With this, we don't expect an increase on the registration, no. And why we don't expect this? Because the only purpose of creating this ad hoc process was to reduce the number of rejections we were having, and in order not to block any UPD submission, any issue of any other GMDP certificate, or even to block a mandatory submission from an EV marketing authorization holder. Now, we've been through work that is ongoing or completed, and what comes next? So linked into this into these entrepreneurs, there is also another niche of people that we have identified, which we call it natural persons. In the same way as the entrepreneurs, this is another niche we currently have under our radar 10 cases. That's why we need, and this process is ongoing, because there seems to be natural people that are now registered as a company with the National Business Registry. They're now registered as a company. And for the reason, again, whilst the long-term solution is under development, the problem still exists, and OMS come to support those entities that are mandatory, again, for UPD, other GMDP certificates, and any marketing authorization holder that fits into this profile. What are we doing and how we're going to make this happen? So currently we're working with legal colleagues to make sure that we have our OMS data quality, our OMS data protection notice update, and that in our OMS data protection notice, we include not only the justification for this process to take place, why is it happened, but how is this going to take place? So we're working with legals to create these two mandatory steps. Shortly, we should have the process in place and allow natural persons to register in OMS for the purpose of UPD, other GMDP, or a natural person that may be acting as a marketing authorization holder in EV. Moving on into the version reason. This is a feature that we've been talking for you probably have been hearing for some time. With this feature, we aim to increase the transparency of OMS changes, what happened, why is it happening. So this, in a nutshell, this will be comprised basically by 2 or 3, let's say in reality it's 3 fields, but we want to share with the user not only the version type, where we're going to use an RMS list with some key points on type of changes that are happening, and the second field will come to in the second field with where we're going to provide more information about these changes. I don't want to get into much detail here because we're going to see the next slide more detailed information of exactly some examples of what's happening around this version comment. How is it going to happen? So let's wait until the next slide. But before we go there, just to give you another upcoming feature, which is the new OMS portal, an upgraded version, an improved version. This was due to the lack of support, technical support. So we really have to do this change. This is currently in UAT, and we expect to have in the next quarter or later in Q1 to have this new version implemented into production. Not only because of the lack of the support, we'll also take the opportunity to improve the user experience, and at the same time increase the security, because exactly we don't have a support anymore. So without support, we put our users in jeopardy. Okay, so now taking one step back to give you more details about this version comment, because this has been in our wish list for some years now. And what do we aim with this? With this feature, we aim to, whenever an OMS record changes happen in our dictionary, each version or each timestamp will have a written reason on why was it created, and how will you be able to see this in the system. So we are going to add basically in our OMS exports, but also you'll also be able to see it in the API, 3 new fields at organization level and 3 new fields at location level, because versions can happen, a new version of organization, and it can also happen at location level. For both, what do you expect to see? So 3 new fields, version code, which is no more than just RMS identifier, version type, which for the user is exactly what you're looking for, which will be a standardized RMS list. Okay, this is currently being developed in consultation with the user group, and we'll move on into internal discussions for a more realistic list. In this list, what will be, in a nutshell, what we want to provide to you. So we want to give you a high level action if it's to add or to update. And we also want to tell you what changed in 1 word or 2 words, what actually changed in the record. And last but not least, we're going to have a free text field where this will be enriched by our data stewards with origin, one of the elements that we want to share with you, because we often receive this question via a ticket, which is the origin of the request, if it was a change request or if it was through an ETL, which we also call it our data services that we saw. If you remember those 4 pillars, where we saw that it could be a mapping exercise, it could be an EV delta. So this is what we aim with the source of changes. And last but not least, what actually changed. And here we have an example of the how one organization name evolved, and I give you some. I'll leave you here some practical examples of how we aim to share this information with you, and a more complex case, which is in the case of a merge. Okay, this is what we are planning to deploy, which is of course using first an RMS term, and last but not least to provide more information, not only if it's a business merge or even if it was a simple deduplication merge that happened, or also providing the golden ID, meaning the ID that will be the new master ID of the record. As you know, we never delete anything from the system. Any IDs are never deleted. What it can happen is that the records may get a different golden ID. And we aim to provide a summary of this using our version free text comment. So this versioning information, as I mentioned, you will have access to these elements through OMS export and through OMS API. You'll see a practical case of this next Monday in the OMS, in the SPOR API webinar. So at the moment, if you go to UAT, this is actually, this is the stage where we are right now. It's currently in UAT stage. What to expect? Just to highlight that this version comment will be implemented and new versions will include this information after the implementation date. So in this case that we have here, old versions will not have this information, will not be able to go back. So what we do is after the implementation date, any changes that happen will have these three elements on a mandatory basis for us. With this, we aim, of course, not only to increase the transparency of our changes, but also to support with complex data changes such as merges that we often receive. We are asked to provide more information about this. Of course, this improvement, following this implementation, we already have in our pipeline improvements plan, both for OMS export and OMS API to ensure, especially when we talk about the merge activity, we know there has been some problems around this merge activity, and we aim to do some improvements to ensure that all versions will be available and there is a clear information on what happened to the non-surviving records. And with this, we go into the highlights of the year, what we changed, what is currently open, and what's coming in the future. So we started the year with a currency check, which we enrich our data quality standards with the US, or with the validation of US organizations. We enrich our dictionary with our National Business Registry number, evident improvements that we saw. We integrated with new systems, and last but not least, we allowed the registration of entrepreneurs. The registration of natural persons is still ongoing. We also have OMS portal, the review of legal entity types versions, and we want to still do more work in improving our OMS category descriptions, the document that we have to have a clear message on which category you should use for each type of case. Upcoming changes, the one that is close to us, finally return the change request functionality, but of course there's other changes in our future that we need to keep an eye on it. And with this, just to leave you a summary of key takeaways. So with this webinar, we hope that we were able to increase your awareness on OMS activities. We share with you some key principles in OMS processes, how they work. We provided some updates in terms of statistics and a very practical case on the integration and how OMS impacts access to PMS. We share with you some recent activities, the recently implemented EV-Delta improvements, the entrepreneur registration, what we are doing, what we aim to conclude in the upcoming months, which include the natural person registration, version reason, and the upgrade of our portal. And last but not least, because I've put through the presentation, I always highlight to please let us know your idea about, in this case, about OMS through the customer survey, and because we take your opinion that you share with us there into consideration for the planning of activities for the next year. In this case, just some practical cases on how we took this into consideration. So we continue to improve our categories. We allow the registration of new entities, and we continue to simplify our user experience. And now let's see how was this session. Hopefully you were able to follow it, and let's take some quiz time to see how exactly it went. So I'll give a couple of minutes for you to join us through Slido. This is going to be, I will say a question or a statement, and then I'll give you 4 options, and you will have to choose out of those 4 options. One of them is going to be the true statement, okay? So it's important. I will try to read it to help to make it easier, but then of course you need to submit your answer, and last we'll see who was the person that answered correctly and in the fastest way. Then I think we have already some participants. You can, of course, use both ways. You can, with your phone, you can scan the QR code, or just using the Slido website and join as a participant using the OMS code that you have available in the screen. Okay, and then I think we can then start. Which organization type is always made public? NCA, industry and manufacturers, academia, hospitals, or all of them are always public? Very good, very good. Most of you were able to answer correctly. Indeed, all of our organizations are publicly available to anyone. And we have one winner. Let's see if you're able to keep the first prize until the last one. Good luck. Let's go to the next one. So who can submit propose a change to OMS dictionary? Anyone can submit a change request to any of the OMS records. Only national competent authorities can propose a change to OMS. Only industries such as marketing authorization holders or sponsors can propose a change to OMS, or each company is responsible to maintain its own record. Which of these do you think it's true? And again, good. Happy to see that majority of you were able to answer. If you remember that slide with the scheme, anyone can propose a change to OMS. With our validation process, we aim to prevent any malicious requests from being submitted. You submitting a change request, it doesn't mean that's going to be published automatically. We do this in the back end. Yaswini, congratulations, still going. Let's 3 more to go. Let's see. Okay, how many records or companies should be created in OMS? We should have 1 record per regulatory procedure, 1 for orphans, 1 for clinical trials, 1 record per legal entity, as we should have as registered in the National Business Registry. We should have 1 record per domain, 1 for human, 1 for vet, or 1 record as many departments or business units there are in the company. Which one do you think we should have in OMS? Perfect, even better. 93%, almost everyone answered this one correctly. OMS capture organizations as legal entities. So we will capture as it is registered with the National Business Registry. And let's see, how is the ranking? Very good. We're still going. Anyone? You need not only to answer correctly, you need to be fast. Let's go then to the 4th question. Which of the following statements are true for EV to OMS Delta features? MAH-EV codes are not yet available in OMS. OMS imports an exact copy of EV data. OMS imports standardized EV data, or there is no connection between EV and OMS. Which one is true for this feature that we recently improved? Let's see if it's going to be tight. Okay, okay, this one. Also good to hear good to see the majority of you answer correctly. Indeed, OMS imports standardized data of the data. We don't import a copy of the data. We always standardize the information. We're not changing the meaning, we're just standardizing the data. And have a quick check to the, we have a change of scenery here. Now we have SW as a winner. Okay, let's see. For the last question, when can I deactivate one location? When I no longer need it for regulatory procedure, when the company is no longer operating or doing business in that physical location, or right after an expansion and the new location is already available in OMS, an expansion, or right after a transfer of marketing authorization holder. When can I deactivate a location? Last question. And what we have, perfect. I've seen that I was able to pass across the message. Again, majority of you answered correctly. And the winner we have SW. Very good, very fast, and all of them very good. And with this, I think now it's time for the questions. I will put the start ones, which is the ones that have not been addressed. And we'll start with the most popular ones, okay? How can we export locations that are inactive? Even if I use the filter to include inactive ones, the report comes out with only active locations. That's correct. The export, you only have access to active records. Inactive records, you don't have access to this in an export format. if you wish to have this information, because this is not an often request that we received, I will advise you to please create a ServiceNow ticket, and we will send you this information on a doc basis. This is not a feature that is often requested, so we don't have it available to anyone. Because as I mentioned, inactivation it only takes place when is no longer needed anymore. That's why inactive records, it means that it's no longer relevant. That's why we didn't make it available. Now, moving on into the next one. Companies can put their registered address in EV, whereas SPOR OMS data standards differ at times because address doctor not being fully aligned correct with registered companies. Any other decision would have a major impact on company profile and information already published. Okay, so this is a frequent question that we receive. We need to, and taking back to one of my initial slides, indeed, OMS is not going to create a copy of supporting documentation. OMS aims to provide a standardized list of standardized information of both organization and location data. OMS follows the National Postal Service, and we know that most of the National Business Registry don't follow the same practice, the same good practice of following local standards. We know that most of the National Business Registry, they create whatever the users submit. And for us, please remember that we're not changing the meaning. What we're changing is we're just changing the way we're standardizing the information. So we're building this dictionary to be used across EU systems. Eventually, with the time, all systems will be using exactly what and how we have the data in OMS. It's not wrong, but in the case you have questions in the future about from inspectors, from NCAs, we have a dedicated guidance that was put together by our SPOR key user group. This is a guidance where explain and give practical examples of what is OMS doing, and if those inspectors or those NCAs have any question, they can always come back to contact us directly. The way to do it is by submitting a service desk ticket. But if you use this guidance in any question that you may have outside EMA, these allow you to give more information about the data that you're using, which is SPOR, and to open the communication channel between them and us. Now, I hope this addressed your question. What EMA recommends on translations? Should your OMS address always register in English language? Yes. So this is actually done automatically. Both organization name and location, because we're talking about an EEA system. The default is that the records will be captured in English, and especially locations, they will always be captured in English. What we're doing and what Address Doctor is helping us is when it's a non-English speaking country, Address Doctor always enrich our dictionary with a child record where you're going to see the same English. The main location will appear in English, but you will have underneath the local language, the location with the local language. So when you submit this data to OMS, it doesn't matter the way you do it, because we're always able to find out. Just to tell you, the default will always be published in English, and if non-English speaking country, a translation will be automatically generated by our address doctor. Are alternative names valid for other GMDP? I can help you with this because we often receive this question, but this question actually, and it's a question that we often send to our GMDP colleagues. So OMS has a dictionary. The idea is you can use the alternative name fields to capture as many names as needed, but other GMDP is not consuming this field from us. Other GMDP only consumes the main organization name. So when other GMDP certificate is being issued and you want to use one of the alternative names that we are capturing in OMS, you need to tell this to the NCA or to the inspector, and they need to add this information under the remarks notes. The other GMDB is not consuming this information directly from OMS at this point. How to update the company name if only a spelling error in the name. Supporting documentation is the original company business registry containing the right name, which differs from the OMS company name. Missing letter. Here, the best way is submit a change request exactly with the supporting documentation that you already have and highlighting where we have the spelling mistake. And I don't see any reason why it would have not been accepted. But if you have any problems after this change request, feel free to reach out through service desk, but I don't think you'll have any problems with this. The answer is change request. Guidance for locations. If an additional building is acquired by a main site next to the is it next? Okay, I see that there are other questions being voted. Okay, I will come back to this one. Do we need to register in OMS all manufacturing facilities, packaging sites, and sterilization sites? Okay, so here it's important to understand that there are two main views about OMS. One is what is OMS and what we do in OMS. The other one is how is OMS being used in a certain regulatory procedure. So OMS and myself, I can help you with OMS process itself. What is needed in OMS, this needs to be defined by each business unit. By, in this case, if you're talking elder GMDP, if this is the system that you need your manufacturer facilities and packing sites, then the answer is yes. If it's any other system and they're not using OMS, then you may not need. But just to highlight that the answer to this question, I would say you probably will need it, but the answer to this question, it depends on the type of, on which consuming system are you looking to use this data. If this consuming system is using OMS on a mandatory basis, then yes, you need to create all of this in OMS. If the consuming system is not using OMS, you don't need to go there immediately and register. I don't know. Yeah, probably we don't have time for more.
Deborah, I'm afraid to say, yes, we're running a little bit of time out of time, and I do realize we have a lot of unanswered questions still. So apologies to users who we didn't manage to address all the questions. Do bear with us. We have a small team trying to address them, and sometimes Deborah is the best person to address them. That's why we didn't answer to all of them. We will keep the questions open and try to address a few more in writing today, and we will fetch the most significant representative for our FAQ document. So bear with us with addressing the questions. In the meantime, if you could quickly reserve a few minutes to run a quick survey on the webinar today and how you felt it went, and particularly what we can improve, we would really appreciate to receive your feedback. So thank you very much for joining. I look forward to see you on the next webinar. So this week we still have webinars on XCVMPD and Monday on SPOR API. And please give us the feedback, and looking forward to see you then. Bye.
Thank you.